Hello everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. I'd like to think those of you who follow me here do so because you want open, honest debate, you want to hear a diverse range of viewpoints, and you want to come to your own conclusions. You don't want things shoved in your face. You also want to hear stories that are not being widely reported in our corrupted and totally bought out mainstream media. I'm sad to share with you in this video yet another story of fraud and deception from, yes, you guessed it, the pharmaceutical industry. Who else? Take a look at this story from only the last few days. So this was reported in Bloomberg. Zantac's maker kept quiet about cancer risks for 40 years. Glaxo says the heartburn drug doesn't cause tumors, but the company was warned by its own scientists and independent researchers about the potential danger. Zantac, or ranitidine, was a medicine that was widely prescribed for heartburn. Millions and millions of people took the drug for many years. So what exactly is this story all about? The small British company was sometimes called Glaxo University because it conducted important pharmaceutical research that rarely resulted in profitable drugs. That's not really what Big Pharma is all about these days. Then the scientists at Glaxo Laboratories created a molecule they called ranitidine, and in 1978 the company was granted a US patent. So this is a rather long article. I have got the link to it down below. It goes through the whole history of ranitidine and what happened. Glaxo marketed it as better and safer than the drug that inspired it, Tagamet, and before long Zantac overtook Tagamet to become the world's best-selling prescription medication. I bet it did. A safer drug, a safe drug or therapeutic. How often do we hear that term from big pharmaceutical companies? The company won an award from Queen Elizabeth, God rest her soul. The chief executive officer was even knighted. Zantac created reputations and fortunes, of course it did. Among its most popular drugs today are the antidepressants Paxil and Wellbutrin and the shingles vaccine Shingrix. But not Zantac. In 2019, the drug was found to be tainted with high levels of a probable carcinogen. A carcinogen is a substance that causes cancer. Not by chance or mistake in a few batches, the poison is created by ranitidine itself. Zantac's makers and health regulators around the world recalled the drug, and in the spring of 2020, the FDA forced it off the market altogether. No company could manufacture it. Nobody should ingest it. Think about what just happened there. A drug which was taken by millions of people suddenly withdrawn so abruptly, and suddenly people are being told you cannot ingest it. The carcinogen called NDMA was once added to rocket fuel and is now used only to induce cancer in lab rats. Just think for a moment about the significance of that last sentence. That is mind-boggling. The FDA says consuming minuscule amounts isn't harmful, but tests were revealing excessive amounts of NDMA in ranitidine and a capacity to create even more over time. No version seemed safe. From ranitidine's beginning to its end, Glaxo had been warned by its own scientists and independent researchers about the potential danger. An account of those 4 decades emerges in hundreds of documents, thousands of pages, many of which have never been made public, and it talks about a Freedom of Information Act to get all of this information. Think about that. Warned for decades as millions and millions of people were taking this drug. More than 70,000 people who took Zantac or generic versions of it are suing the company in the United States courts for selling a potentially contaminated and dangerous drug. The first of those trials is supposed to begin in late February, so this month in California, but will likely be postponed until the summer to accommodate the judge's schedule. And as I said, it's a very, very long article, and I put the link down below, but fascinating to read about the history of ranitidine and how this all happened. So a very disappointing story, but is it really a surprise? For any of us who are awake, as I've said before, you will struggle to find any industry on the planet right now with a bigger record for fraud, deception, and criminality than the pharmaceutical industry. And it's not just me saying it. Go online and look for yourself. Even over the last 15 to 20 years, so relatively recently, Billions and billions of dollars in fines paid out for fraudulent activity. It's happening over and over again, and every single pharmaceutical company has been involved. It is an utter disgrace. These are supposed to be companies that are all about health and well-being of the general public. So much for that. And why does it keep on happening? Why doesn't it stop? Well, it keeps on happening across Western countries, with the United States being one of the worst offenders, because our government is basically owned by big pharmaceutical companies. 2/3 of Congress, members of Congress of all political persuasions, have accepted a check from Big Pharma. Hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year on political lobbying, and there is a merry-go-round at the top of people who are all friends with each other, who sit on boards of pharmaceutical companies, kickbacks, etc. There is a huge money-making machine that is nothing to do with the health and well-being of the American people. I've also said before, and I'll say it again, if any physician out there had even 1/100th or even 1,000th the record of fraud and criminality of a big pharmaceutical company, they would not be allowed anywhere near a patient. Think about that. So how do we stop this then from happening in the future? Well, I don't claim to have all the answers, but surely one of the top answers has to be that pharmaceutical companies have to face severe consequences for their actions, not pitiful fines which are nothing for them because they've already ripped so many people off that they have so much money to play with. $1 billion fine, no big deal for a pharmaceutical company. There have to be serious consequences, including for the executives of these companies, so they are fearful for doing the wrong thing. I mean, what possible excuses could there be for ignoring a cancer risk for decades? It's inconceivable to anyone with a conscience that warnings could be ignored for that long. I'll tell you this as well, we absolutely cannot rely on doctors and scientists to be trustworthy in this field. Many doctors and scientists are simply paid shills of the organizations they work for. There are very few independent-minded doctors and scientists out there who will raise the red flag and speak out. As the saying goes, over 90% of doctors and scientists will agree with whoever is funding them. It's all about following the money. It has little to do with following the science. And it makes you ask the obvious question, if stories like this Zantac story keep on happening again and again, then what else out there is potentially dangerous that millions of people could be taking and the pharmaceutical companies are deliberately ignoring? Warnings, health hazard. What else out there? What other medicines and therapeutics fall into this category? Think about that. So coming back to this main story then, I do hope that for all those hundreds of thousands, millions of people who took Zantac, that the vast majority are okay. And I hope that those who did suffer a negative health consequence get some sort of compensation for what happened to them. And I hope that they're okay as well. Really sad when we hear about pharmaceutical companies that are supposed to be about health and well-being inflicting damage on people. And what's worse is knowing about that damage and staying silent. But again, please don't be surprised, don't be shocked. Keeps on happening over and over again, and it will keep on happening. So what can you do for yourself and your family to protect yourself in this world that we're in? Well, the first thing, if you are awake and quote-unquote red-pilled, is to be wise to the ways of the world, to know how the world operates, to know how the establishment operates, and the enormous conflicts of interests that exist at the top that do not care one jot for you or your family's health. Be wise. Do your own research, ask around, get trusted opinions, but do not trust anything that big pharmaceutical companies say at face value, because they have an appalling record and a proven record of fraud and criminality. I certainly don't trust a word that they say, based on that history. Simple common sense. If anyone lies so much, why would you trust them? And keep this in mind as well. The majority of doctors' organizations out there, even if you go to your typical doctor conference, is sponsored by these big pharmaceutical companies. Medical journals sponsored by these big pharmaceutical companies that have such an appalling record. Look at the terrible situation we're in. And this is a major reason why healthcare and medicine is doomed unless we drastically change. Thanks everyone for listening. Do let me know your thoughts. Check out my online course and my Uncensored platform. Those links are down below. Hit the like button if you like this video and the bell button for more similar videos in the future. Remember, huge swathes of healthcare and medicine are completely and utterly corrupted, and do your best to take your health into your own hands and stay away from mainstream medicine. Thanks again, and we will chat again very soon.